Happy Friday. Welcome to the Channel CEO podcast. This podcast is sponsored by My IT Spend. Discover the hidden value of your client contracts with My IT Spend. Simply enter the number of customers and average monthly spend. Estimate your potential return on your investment. So learn more over at channelprogram.com/My IT Spend. So I'm pumped up to have this next guest on our podcast here today. Our podcast and live stream late on a Friday afternoon in the middle of the summer. How about that? So most of you know who I'm going to bring on. So I'll save you the long introductions because he's got one hell of a background. And I think we covered introductions on the last podcast. So without further ado, I'm going to add Mr. Fred Voccola to the live stream.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing, bud? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for jumping on yet again. You guys are making, I think making moves is an understatement in what you're doing in the industry.
I think
you're trying.
Before we talk about that, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
What you're doing
Let's talk about me.
is awesome. And, I know this is your, your podcast and your audience. And so obviously most of the people here are hopefully fans of yours, but you built a great service provider serving federal and government. A lot of people don't know that. So for those of you who don't know, I like bragging about my friends. I consider Kevin a friend, so it's always fun to brag about your friends. Built like a big services company, big one. Then he started ID Agent. Built it to a pretty big amount. I'm going to go into financials. Kaseya bought it. One of the best acquisitions that we've done for two reasons. Great tech. Not only did we get the dark web monitoring, but we got the security awareness training that you designed purposely for MSPs. And I remember when you told me about it. We also got Kevin, and I think it was a couple of years, 3 years. I think you stayed with Kaseya after the acquisition, and it was awesome. You also built a great team at IDH. Dan Tomaszewski and Solomon, those guys, they came, and Dan's still here. Dan's running the True Peer stuff and Powered Service stuff. He's rocking. And then you go and you start your new venture. I remember, for those who know, Kevin and I were talking about, we talk, socially and about business and other stuff. And I remember telling Kevin when he told me, I'm like, you have gold there. And what you're doing is awesome. And I just want to say congratulations on it. I think it's a great idea. Channel's lucky to have you, my man. You are definitely kicking ass and one of the true innovators in the game. And you're doing it without going that venture capital route, raising 20, 30 million bucks, burning tons of money. You're doing it the old fashioned way, which is with your own money and generating profit from day one. It's a great lesson in entrepreneurship, and you should be very proud.
Yeah, I love it, man. Flip the script and, sit here and talk about me for the next half hour. That's great, man. I appreciate it.
You're also super handsome,
There you go. Yeah, keep going. No, but thank you. No, it's sometimes you wonder if you're just a glutton for punishment or what. But every time you kind of start from zero, you have to look at look back up the mountain and try to figure out how you're going to get there. And so that's the fun part. Sometimes it's not fun in the thick of it, but yeah, we'll keep doing what we're doing. But yeah, so what I was saying, right, is that obviously it's about feels like every 6 months you guys come out with game-changing announcement. I know the latest game-changing announcement was back in April out at Connect in Vegas, and that had to do with K365, Kaseya 365. I think, for a lot of folks that were in that room, I think some of the talking points that you brought up about, how, like, you spent 10 years, and I was there and witnessed a couple of those years of you really toiling, on the whiteboard trying to figure this model out. But you spent 10 years really, putting a lot of effort into getting it to this point. And I think you guys should be commended for that. So, some of the things I want to touch on really is really how you're helping to change kind of the unit economics of the MSP moving forward. And then, because this marketplace is evolving, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but I guess give us really just a high level of K365 and really what your goal is with it and how it influences the MSPs or impacts the MSPs.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. Like most MSPs are entrepreneurs. They started themselves, they bought it, they're CEOs that were brought in, but they're entrepreneurial. You and I are very similar. Started multiple companies and just like to find solutions and disrupt things. And I was lucky enough to find Kaseya. And when we started about 6 months before we actually, took the job and took over Kaseya. One of the things, the trend that we saw, there's a couple like massive trends. Right? One of the trends, and this is literally going back about 10 years and 6 months ago, we started to see small to mid-sized businesses, right? The customers of MSPs. Fancy word is digitally transforming. What that means is the business applications and the industrial applications, the systems and the data that they use was becoming truly mission critical. 10 years ago, the dentist maybe had a computer in the corner. Today, they can't clean your teeth if their network is down. They can't take an x-ray. They can't generate revenue. They're dependent on technology. So, and that's across every small to mid-sized industry, right? Hospitality, healthcare, fitness, you name it, medical, construction, law, architecture. So we saw that trend happening. And we said, because these systems are going to be required, someone's going to have to make something always available and always secure. You know what I mean? And that's obviously not the architecture firm, the law firm, because they don't have internal IT people. It's going to be their VAR, right? Or the early days of the managed service provider. So we said, all right. And as we looked at it, we saw something interesting. It's clear as day. Looking in the rear view mirror, hindsight's always 20/20. But even then, we could see that the capabilities required, or the functionality, or the amount of work required to keep these systems always available and always secure, particularly with the ransomware epidemic starting 6, 7, 8 years ago, and the focus of those actors focusing on small to mid-sized businesses. The job of an MSP was only going to get harder and harder, and it is. It's one of the hardest jobs there is. And then we saw the problem, or one of the fundamental challenges in the industry. The MSP was becoming, and today is without a doubt, the most important business service provider for their customers.
Totally agree.
There's 2 other service providers that most small to mid-sized businesses have. Legal, they're lawyers who we all love so much, and accountants, or the tax people. Here's a crazy stat, Kevin. I know you know this, but this is the problem that Kaseya is about solving. Why is it that the average profit margin of a law firm is in the mid-30s, an accounting firm is in the mid-30s, the average MSP in the Western world, North America, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, is between 8 and 12%, depending on what you look at. It's 1/3 of that, 1/3 the profit margin of the other business service providers that aren't remotely as valuable and whose job isn't remotely as hard. And that's the problem that Kaseya set off to tackle. There's a lot of reasons for it. One of the reasons is there's a pretty substantial COGS element for a managed service provider. Lots of hardware and software to do the things that need to be done. And that's very expensive. The second aspect is the tooling that a lot of these folks have to use, or that they do use, MSPs do use. It's not purpose built for an MSP. Most of those technologies were designed and built by single function technology people. Great products, but they're great products for someone who does backup all day long, or network monitoring all day long. They weren't built for the MSP, whose engineers and technicians are doing backup and network monitoring on the help desk and patch management, all in a workflow. So we started on the journey of addressing that by building a platform which contained all of the functionality in one place, so that we can automate in the beginning through manual automation, and now through AI automation. We can automate what the engineers or the technicians of an MSP does, so that they can generate more revenue per technician. And then we charge a fraction for our software kit. And that's the journey. And the the first complete deliverable of that was Kaseya 365. And what Kaseya 365 is it's one subscription. And in that one subscription gives all the functionality that an MSP needs to deliver all of the majority of the managed services to their clients, combined with the automation to automate most of it. So in that subscription, the functionality of RMM, everything to manage, right? RMM manages the environment. To secure it, we include antivirus, EDR, MDR, patch management, managed SOC, 24/7 managed SOC, all included. We also include endpoint backup in that. And we do it, that whole solution, for about $4 per endpoint per month. We also have a version, it's a lighter version, it's like $1.75, and that doesn't include the 24/7 SOC. So what that does, Kevin, is not only are we providing what most managed service providers are paying $15 to $20 a month for, we're providing it for them at $4 a month, giving them $10 a month more profit per endpoint. But the technology, all this is one product, it's one subscription. So the automations that are built in there allow the engineers to be substantially more productive. And we think that Kaseya 365, we've seen, it generates anywhere from $8 to $10 of pure profit per endpoint per month per MSP. And we released it about 2.5 months ago. We have about little more than 4,000 partners are on the platform. There's right around 5 million endpoints on the platform. So here's the cool part. There's 5 million endpoints on the platform, right? If we're generating, call it $8, let's be conservative, $8 a month per endpoint per profit for these MSPs. And there's 5 million endpoints out there. That's $40 million a month, or roughly an annualized rate of $480 million a year of additional profit that Kaseya 365 on a run rate basis is providing to the MSP community. And that's our mission. Our mission is to make it so that the MSP, who's the most valuable service provider for their customers, and who's, quite frankly, it's hard. They're not always respected by their customers. It's, oh, you're the tech guy. They don't get the respect that a lawyer does, or someone like that.
Yeah, it's completely undervalued.
100%. And our job is to make sure that we build a platform and we build a company that can change the unit economics of the industry. So the MSP owners and MSP shareholders and the MSPs themselves can receive the type of financial rewards that they should. And that's our mission. And Kaseya 365 was the first step. There's 3 more big steps that Kaseya has to make. It's the first step at getting the unit economics to average a profitability rate in the 30 to 35% range for MSPs. That's what we're focused on.
It's interesting. Stabilizing the unit economics, right, and impacting, that's a massive impact per endpoint, or per user, per customer endpoint per month, right? But you've seen this trend over the last couple of years where, there's the data that we see, right? There's stack parity, right? If you look across the thousands of MSPs that are on our channel program platform, we can see, high level, just there's stack parity. The average stack is roughly the same. So MSPs often have a hard time going in and really differentiating themselves. This is, I'm providing, this, competitors providing this, and you're seeing them have a hard time really differentiate. One of our hypotheses, right, is that MSPs got to go in, stabilize their kit cost, right, normalize it, and what you guys are doing is absolutely fantastic. But I think one of the next steps is they have to go in and really, show the differentiation, show the value. Where there's been this rush to, say, here's my managed service, here's where we are compared to somebody else. But what are the added value? What's the added value the MSP is providing? And so we're looking at things like, with our My IT Spend platform, how do they go in there and have a holistic conversation about all of their spending versus just, just managing their network, right? Just keeping their, their backups, backed up and keeping their email flowing and secure. But how do they have a conversation about their entire technology spend? And so I don't know if you guys are seeing anything, similar, feedback from MSPs saying that, they need to evolve their service offerings.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, you have so many nuggets in what you just said, and I hope all the listeners can appreciate the value of the data and the power in the analytics that you have. You and I talk about it a lot, like off camera. I mean, the platform's super cool. We see a lot of different trends. MSPs tell us a lot of different trends. As you know, Kevin, I've never run an MSP, so I get to talk to hundreds of them, on a quarterly basis, and I learn a lot. But some of the trends or the feedback or the input that we're getting is there continues to be a spread between what needs to be done to properly manage and really secure, a customer, and what that customer is willing to pay, which is nothing more than a reflection of their understanding of the value that's there. So it's putting MSPs in a tough spot because, to your point, an MSP they're not going to be successful knocking on the door of a customer saying, I'm going to put in XYZ vendor, because 95% of non-IT and security people don't know anything, no idea. So the managed service provider has the challenge of convincing a non-technical and security astute professional about what is really required to give them what they're asking for. And that's hard to do. I give this analogy a lot, Kevin. As a human being, we're intellectual, we're reasonably smart, species and people. Most people intellectually understand what personal loss is. They get it. But it's so different when you feel it. You don't really understand it until you experience like a personal thing that's like personal loss. Then the definition of personal loss might be the same in Webster's, but you're able to understand it more. And you're probably able to empathize with others better. And that analogy is true when it comes to non-IT and security people. If they've never had a cyber breach, or if they've never had a cyber attack, or they've never had their system down for 2 days, you don't understand what it's like until your business shuts down.
Right.
Then you say, holy, if this wasn't live, I probably would have said the 4-letter word I wanted to say, holy whatever, this is real. And I think most of the customers of MSPs understand logically that there's risk and things like that, but they haven't all experienced it yet. So the willingness to pay the extra $30 or $40 or $50, or the willingness to engage in more strategic conversations with the MSP, that's still evolving. And what we're trying to do with that is, so what MSPs tell us is, because that's still evolving, sometimes the end customer won't pay for advanced security solutions, as an example, or they won't pay for certain things that are required to give them what they need. So the customer says, I'm just not paying for it. I'm sure it's secure at the $120 a user base price. I don't need the extra $70 advanced security. And the MSP is like, well, they know that customer is going to be naked in this example against certain threats. And they're put in a really tough spot, Kevin, because they have to make a choice. Do I take the commercial business because they have employees they have to pay and a business to run? Or do they take the moral high ground and say, you know what? It's not worth the risk. I'm going to let you go. Because if that customer has a breach, or if that customer has an outage because they wouldn't get the redundancy they need, or whatever it may be, they're blaming that MSP no matter what. What we're trying to do with Kaseya 365 is, by changing the unit economics of the industry as much as we're doing, that MSP doesn't have to make that choice. They can put the advanced, in this example, they can put the advanced security kit on the customer who won't pay for it and still maintain their profit margins.
Right.
Or they can let them try it for 4 months. So it gives them more optionality. So a lot of the challenges that you're mentioning, we're trying to make them go away, so that there's more gross margin on the dollar of managed services for the MSP to manipulate as they see fit.
Yeah. So one of the things that, slightly switching gears, but one of the things that's really interesting about this marketplace is that, especially over the last, I'd say 5 years, the MSPs in general have been maturing, right? A couple of really cool things why this is always a growth market is that you've got new entrants, you've got a couple thousand new entrants every year. But for the most part, the marketplace is maturing, and we've seen that where we've had a couple of our M&A roadshows. We had one up in Chicago. We just had one out in California, and the quality of the questions from the audience have been increasingly more sophisticated, which is great to see. But one of the interesting byproducts of this is that private equities come in, and there's kind of this general, I guess, not understanding, but it's kind of general sentiment that private equity has bought up all the good ones, right? They've rolled up all the good MSPs, the ones that had solid EBITDA, maybe in a loan of 500,000 up to 5 million, and now it's kind of exposing this kind of second layer of MSPs in the marketplace, and that second layer of MSPs really trying to get their mind around how they become more efficient, how they become more profitable. You're seeing a lot of MSPs actually, teaming up. I've had a lot of conversations with MSPs that are in peer groups, and they're saying, instead of going out and trying to chase down or answer all the private equity phone calls that are coming, first thing I'm going to do is go partner up with one or two of my peer mates, and then consolidate our businesses, and then we'll go out into the market. And so, I mean, in general, are you guys seeing that as a trend? And does that play into any of the positioning that you guys have going on with the revised packaging and how you guys are going to market?
So, a couple things. First, talk about some of the comments in the industry, then what we're trying to do for it. So, our data tells us there's about 144,000 named MSPs. These are IT and security service providers serving for companies of 3,000 employees or less as the primary market. And we do a lot of M&A. We have a big M&A platform, an M&A concierge group. We do a lot of M&A work, and you've been to and you've spoken at some of the shows on it because you are an expert in it yourself. We think last year in 2023, there was like 1,700. We've tracked about 1,700 M&A deals in the market. We tracked about 4,500 new MSPs get created. So the market's huge. When you have a market, the TAM, the total addressable market, small to mid-sized businesses spend on technology, is one of, I hate to say the largest, one of the largest B2B markets in the world. And it's growing at like 4 times GDP growth. So you're right, Kevin, the market's just so dang big. The comment about private equity coming in, it started like 5 years ago. We really started seeing them get aggressive. And now we're seeing a lot of software-based private equity firms looking at our managed service provider market. The driver for that's real simple. There's a huge TAM. There's a recurring revenue model. And the third part's pretty unique. And this is where a lot of the financial engineering comes into play that private equity firms can do. While organic growth of 8 to 12 to 14% for an at-scale MSP is really good, they can juice that by 4, 5, 6, 8 points through M&A. And they'll buy someone at 5 times or 6 times earnings, and when they plug them into their company, because they're an at-scale MSP, which trades at 12 to 15 times earnings, they create a lot of value by doing it. So we're seeing a ton of that going on. We're also seeing, Kevin, a lot of the quote-unquote roll-ups, they're taking a bit of a pause. I think a lot of them are now saying, all right, what, 10, 20, 30, 40 different businesses. Let's focus on getting the efficiencies from the integration of them. So we're seeing a little bit of that. So I don't know if I would say all the best ones have been bought up. I think a lot of the aggregators are saying, we have to digest. Speaking to a guy that's bought 17 different companies in the last 9 years, it's not always easy to digest companies, and you got to make sure that things keep going. But I do think we're going to continue to see consolidation, yet there will be more MSPs in the market, which is such a weird thing. I don't know if an industry's ever seen that before. And what we're doing, it's pretty simple. Our North Star is MSPs powered by Kaseya. We want them to have unit economics that are 3 times better than those who are not. If analogy I like to give is this: if there's 2 electric car companies, and one of them pays $20,000 per car per battery, and the other one pays $5,000 per battery per car, who's going to win? It gives a lot more room for error. So what we're finding is a lot of MSPs who are doing M&A are moving on to Kaseya 365 and to the IT Complete platform, because M&A is hard to do. I don't care who you are, how arrogant we all may be, it's friggin' hard. And there's not a lot of room for error. If you pay a top price for an asset and you integrate the asset, if something in the business plan doesn't go well, the returns aren't going to be what you planned for. So if there's an MSP on Kaseya 365 and they buy someone and they migrate them onto Kaseya 365, it makes the acquired asset so much more profitable after the fact. So we have a big group that works with most of the large MSPs, and the mid-size MSPs are, they're Kaseya customers and Kaseya shops, and they're finding huge advantage because they're going to go out and say, all right, if I buy someone who's on Kaseya 365, that's awesome. Same kit, migrates right away. If I buy someone who's not, and I move them on to this platform, they're going to increase the gross margin 15% on the asset they buy after they buy it. So, it gives a whole lot of wiggle room for error. And so we've had a lot of success with that, a lot of success. And we're going to see a lot more of it in the coming weeks as well.
Yeah, just maybe another question, right? So we've done a lot of work here recently with the technology services distributors or cloud service distributors that started in that traditional telco space. They support, or their channel is primarily the trusted advisors, the hundreds of thousands of bars, resellers,
agents,
and
everybody. Yeah.
Exactly. And, I think in general, one of the trends that we're seeing is, to your point, right, why this marketplace is so, I guess, frothy, if you will, is that a lot of these trusted advisors or bars that, were chasing kind of that big hit type of deal, margin-based deal, maybe they're selling hardware, maybe they're selling connectivity. They're now looking at this marketplace and they're looking at the recurring revenue models, and you're seeing, just a deluge. I mean, it's just an absolute flood of trusted advisors now coming into this marketplace, trying to, put up their recurring revenue business models, hang their shingles at an MSP. So yeah, I just kind of throw that out there because to your point, that the number of new entrants into this marketplace, it's almost like a blind spot for a lot of these MSPs. I think that's one of the reasons why they need to really be, getting serious about these concepts of unit economics, about adding value, really about maturing their business, because it's not just the person maybe that got laid off at a big tech company that said, I'm going to go out there and start a break fix and become an MSP. You got that element of the marketplace coming at you. And now you've got this whole trusted advisor marketplace moving downstream, trying to take a bite of the MSP apple as well. And so, yeah, it really highlights just how in demand this marketplace is, how resilient it's been even through COVID and through kind of the stuttering economics of the last couple of years.
You mentioned something interesting just now, and you said it a little bit earlier, and that is the market or the MSPs themselves are maturing, and that's true. So the market's I hate to use the word exploding because it's been consistently on that very, very
Mhm.
steep growth curve. But when we say the market's maturing, I think what we hear is MSP saying we're seeing a little bit of price pressure now, because as MSPs are growing and private equity money comes in, private equity, it's professionally managed money, which means it has to grow in value. So if Kevin, if you and I started an MSP, we got up to 10 million of recurring revenue, and hopefully, because we're using Kaseya 365, right? We're making $3 million a year in profit. But whatever we're making, if we have a 3% growth year, it's not what we want, but it's our business. Like, we're still making a lot of money. We're doing well. If we're sponsored by a private equity firm, and the private equity firm has a bad year, their business model, their return gets, I mean, it's pretty bad. So
Yeah.
what you're finding is the go-to-market, the sales and marketing and account management expertise that exists in industries like software and telco and some other industries, when larger, I don't even mean size larger, when more mature MSPs start adopting those practices, they become much more competitive, because the vast majority of MSPs are what you described. They're sub 30 employee companies, sub 20 employee companies, actually sub 10 employee companies, the largest number of them. Very smart engineers, very smart people who aren't professional sales and marketing people. And it's not what they are. And they're competing from a sales and marketing perspective with a professionally trained 10 to 20 year experienced sales and marketing professional with financial resources behind it. So it gets tough. And what I tell MSPs a lot is, like you indicated before, get into a peer group, get into like a true peer, or Robin Robbins, or there's so many of them. Dipple's old group, there's so many of them, and they have good playbooks to teach, because it's getting, as good as the market is, it's getting competitive. And the important thing about this market to never forget is the buyer of the managed services is not a technology expert. So marketing a complex managed service offering to a non-technical buyer is a very important skill. And professionally trained sales and marketing people are very good at it. So that's one of the things that we're seeing with the maturity of the market and what's coming.
Yeah. All right. So we got a couple minutes left here. I read, I forget what publication it was a couple of days ago, that there's some big, exciting, forthcoming announcement in the fall. Care to break some news on the podcast?
Yeah. So Kaseya 365 that we announced in Vegas at the end of April. Excuse me. That was the first of 4 steps. 4 key, call them announcements, that we'll be making, which we believe, and we're very confident, will permanently change the unit economics of this industry forever, and allow MSPs to properly be compensated for the value they provide to society, to their customers, everyone. The first big step there was Kaseya 365. We think that adds, like we said, $6, $7, $8 per user per endpoint, however the pricing works, like 10 to 12 percentage points of profit margin. Gets us a third of the way there. We have a really important announcement that we'll be making at our Miami DattoCon conference, end of October, which is the second big step to get there. Now, a lot of people ask, well, is this an acquisition? Kaseya 365 obviously was not an acquisition. This time, we're not saying that this announcement will not be an acquisition. But this announcement will have a greater impact for MSPs powered by Kaseya and the industry as a whole than what Kaseya 365 did. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize, it doesn't get talked a lot about, but Kaseya 365, we like to think it did a lot of good things for the industry, even if people aren't using it, because other vendors have to lower their price. They have to compete. And we're seeing that, we're hearing about it. Now, I don't know if you talk to other vendors, CEOs, and they might say different things, but word on the street is it's creating competitive pressure and people are having to lower their prices. That's good for MSPs. Maybe it's not good for other vendors, but it's good for MSPs. And what we're going to be announcing in October will probably rock the world, the MSP world, more so than what we did with Kaseya 365. And it's going to be a lot of fun. That I promise will be a lot of fun.
All right, I got to read between the lines. Some big words there. Rock the world. I mean, that's setting a big bar. So, and I'm sure you'll live up to the hype, like you always do.
Yeah, we'll try, my man.
Yeah.
We'll try.
Yeah. Well, look, I know it's late on a Friday afternoon in the middle of the summer, but I thank you very much for hopping on and getting us up to speed in all things Kaseya and K365, and we've got something to look forward to here, I guess, to this forthcoming DattoCon in a couple of months, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, appreciate it. And again, thanks for what you're doing, channel program. I think it's super cool. And congratulations on. No, you're doing a banging job, brother. Congratulations on it. Awesome.
I appreciate it. All right. Thanks, sir.